How do I keep from getting pulled into thought? This is a question somebody asked me recently, and there's a bit more background to it we will go into. But the object of the video is to discuss strategies to prevent getting pulled into your mind, into thoughts, into identification, especially when interacting with other people. So the person who asked the question has had a recent shift in their understanding of the nature of thought and the nature of self. And this key shift, this key insight, really marks the beginning of one's authentic spiritual unfolding. It is the realization that I am not my thoughts. Understand that it's possible to hear that, to learn about that, and believe that I am not my thoughts, or even see experientially at one time or another that your thoughts aren't what you are. And yet, the sense of being bound into thoughts remains fully intact. So when this shift occurs, when this insight occurs, it's reasonably remarkable. There's a definite freeing up of the sense of self, the sense of I or who I am, from the world of thought. It's felt, it's instinctual and obvious. It's not a concept. It's not a conceptual understanding of what I was just talking about. So after this key insight, we find ourselves in this place where there are long periods of the sense of just being in presence, or just being in the self with a big S, or being unidentified from thought, which is very freeing, fluid, peaceful, enjoyable. Life is very simple. And this doesn't have to be a meditative experience. This is carried through activities and even interacting with others at times. However, that's intermixed with periods where we feel a contraction or a pull into the mind, or feel ourselves entangled in thoughts and identity, yet knowing that that's actually not true. So this is sort of a paradoxical experience in that the insight itself is so fundamental that it hasn't gone away. And so really this feels uncomfortable, this pulling into mind, into identification. It feels like, why is this happening? I know it's not real. I know it's not true. I've seen through it. But it also can't be denied that it's going on, that there are a lot of thoughts and I'm stuck in them. I'm bound into them and I'm trying to find my way out. And by trying to find my way out of the thoughts, I'm kind of binding myself back into the thoughts, kind of like a jungle of sticky thoughts. And we find ourselves in this and we struggle a little bit. We might come to the conclusion that there's no way out of it and then just kind of relax and forget about it. And then presence is there again. And then we try to figure out the formula. Well, what did I do? What did I think? How did I cause that to happen? And then we remember, okay, it's not about any of that. It's already just this. And then we relax again. So there's this funny thing where we get bound up into thoughts and identity and seeking in the mind, and then it's just gone, and then it comes back and it's gone, and it's unpredictable. There are periods where we have just presence for a prolonged period of time, and then periods where we feel like we spend weeks just entangled in thoughts. Okay, so this is par for the course. This is totally normal, first of all. In fact, it almost has to be this way. The fact that being re-identified, seemingly, or pulled into thoughts or pulled into the entanglement of identity has to be uncomfortable. And it is intrinsically uncomfortable. And it becomes more obviously intrinsically uncomfortable after that initial insight. But it's good because this contrast is what allows us to continue to disentangle these dualistic knots. Not even that we're doing it, but it's going to continue to happen. You could say life is doing it. Or you could even say the body mind is intelligent. It figures this out over time. It figures out that struggle and identification is inherently uncomfortable and takes a lot of energy. And then the moments of presence, peace, relinquishment are so simple. They don't require energy, and they're peaceful and enjoyable. So over time, the body-mind figures it out, or life figures it out, but it gets sorted out. So this contrast is intelligent. So it's important to have this insight in real time that it's uncomfortable to be identified, to be thought identified. So that knowing that this process is unfolding just as it has to, as it should, in the best possible way, can bring us a degree of freedom, a degree of peace, even when we're not feeling peaceful, even when we're not feeling free. So the second point I want to make about this is that there are times or situations where we're much more prone to identification. We're much more prone to being internal, to going up into our mind, to feeling distanced, to feeling that polarity in consciousness where we feel like a subject and everything out there is the object and we're trying to navigate it. And being around people is often one of those triggers, one of the situations that makes it more challenging to just relax into presence. It's not always the case, but it tends to be one of the big triggers. And there are important reasons for this, and maybe I'll go into those in a different video, but it's not really in the scope of this video. The point is, you'll usually notice it. A simple, common phenomenon that almost everyone can relate to is social anxiety. Just being around people for whatever reason, and we think of all kinds of reasons and have narratives around it, but the truth of it is just being around people in small groups or large groups can be just uncomfortable, can be unsettling. If we have some insight and we have some access to our emotions into the body, we know this. It's just uncomfortable at times, sometimes very uncomfortable. And some people, it's always uncomfortable. They're just never really relaxed and comfortable around others. So just like the first pointer, just knowing this can bring a degree of release, of relaxation, knowing it's just this way and it's okay that it's this way. We are social creatures. We empathize very quickly and easily. We vibe with others. We pick up their emotional states. We even pick up their thought patterns through behavioral and emotional imprinting, nonverbal communication, etc. So this is totally normal. So what to do in these situations, or how to reduce the tension, or how to reduce the tendency to go up into our minds in social situations or interacting with various people. Well, the first thing is that most of the work done around this is not actually done in that situation. It's done in mundane situations. When you're relaxed, when you're just going about your daily activities, or when you're meditating. These are opportunities to really come into presence, to come into the senses, to recognize what it feels like to just be I, or just consciousness flowing, moving, shifting, forming thoughts, disforming thoughts, but never moving from this, from just this conscious space of knowing, of knowingness, without having to know anything specific, or just pure resting in the I sense. That's practice. It's simple practice. It's even nearly effortless. And sometimes it is effortless, but it is practice. It's important. We often don't realize the causal relationship between daydreaming, wandering through our internal world of thoughts when we're feeling relaxed and we're not in a triggering situation, and having that happen involuntarily when we are in a triggering situation. So if we practice spending a lot of time in thoughts, especially as an escape in a daydreamy way, that's exactly where we're going to go when we're feeling tense, when we're feeling triggered, when we're feeling cornered emotionally, whatever. So the practice that's going to clarify this for us in the most triggering situations, especially initially, occurs in the least triggering situations. When you have free time, when you have space to just sit or move about, do your daily activities, engage the physical world, but do so by leaning into the senses, exploring the senses. And then the habit will be there. And when you're in a situation that's more triggering, it's much easier to just stay in the senses, to let your attention drop into the body sense, the sounds and the swirling colors and shapes and images appearing and disappearing. Also, be patient. Give yourself permission to process all of this over time, not mentally, but energetically. It takes a while. It can take a couple years or a few years before things really calm down in most or all situations. Now, when you are in a triggered or triggering situation, first of all, don't hold yourself to high standards. Telling yourself, well, I know what presence is and I should be able to just immediately snap my fingers and be completely present in this triggering situation is probably not going to happen. It's unreasonable. So, some of the tension can be relieved by just realizing I don't have to hold myself to any standard in this moment. Whatever happens is fine. It's totally fine. The best I can do is try to just show up, be present, notice what's actually happening, what's happening in the body, what the senses are bringing in, noticing the movement of thoughts and consciousness. And if there's a narrative, noticing what is the narrative, what are the beliefs here, and just slowing down, relaxing into the whole interactive flow of the moment. We tend to polarize and fixate on one thought, fear, person, but there's so much more data, so much more information, so much more energy moving through. And when we just relinquish ourselves to that energy flow, to the movement, things become far more spontaneous, relaxed. Moreover, tense or relaxed don't matter too much because we can see those are thoughts and beliefs. It's just sensations. It's just the physicality of aliveness, moving, ebbing, flowing, shifting. This is the way we find equanimity and peace in any and all situations. And at some point, it becomes obvious that there aren't even situations. There's just vivid presence.